Ninth Age Fantasy Battles is a wargame in fantasy-based setting that has very good competitive balance, narrative gameplay and skirmish mode. All you need is a ruler, tokens, a handle of dice and a friend that wants to play. Also, it is good to have a faction rulebook and sometimes core rules reference for difficult situations. In this wargame you may use any kind of miniatures. Just remember the main rule: represent your faction on the battlefield. Orc should be an orc miniature, dwarf should be a dwarf miniature, and so on. Weaponry also should be provided on the miniature as it is on the list. You will create a roster for your faction, and after that you may play with your friend any kind of battles, defending a dwarven hold, attacking a human settlement, and so on. And of course you may play competitively. Game duration is about 2-3 hours in general. The game itself is divided into turns, and each turn has 5 phases showing different aspects of a typical wargame. After deployment and roll-off, each turn you will have the following cycle: charge phase, movement phase, magic phase, shooting phase, melee phase. After that, process repeats each time until the end of the battle. Also, you are having different kind of missions, narrative or competitive. In deployment phase, you choose a mission and set up your battlefield. Each mission may have their own set of terrain, or you may just use your head and creativity if you want to. You set up a terrain and both of you make a roll-off. Winner will decide who is attacker or defender. In further game, that will be an important cause your opponent will set up his units depending on the situation, or you may just set a casual rule if you want to. Each deployment type will be shown in your rulebook. Also, you are having a terrain. There are several types of terrains, such as ruins, forest, impassable terrain, pond, field, and so on. Also, if you are playing a narrative game, you may add your kind of terrains, and each type of terrain have their own set of rules. For an example, you just can't pass through impassable terrain, but that's obvious. In charge phase, player whose turn is now declares a charge, and the opponent reacts. And the sequence continues. Also, try to keep up on arcs of your opponent's units. Each movement phase, you may choose to move your units or make a march with them. Just remember that march makes some of your units' mechanics much harder to use. Also, each time you are making a move, try to check your arcs of the unit. That is important, for your opponent may have an advantage. All of your units are having the arcs, a front one, rear one and a back one. That is also important to know. Each magic phase, you and your opponent take a card, describing how many magic dice and tokens do you have. Remember that tokens may be converted into dice, and the process of the conversion is always the same, 3 tokens to a 1 dice. When you are casting a spell, you may use some of your dice or all of your dice for a cast. You choose a spell and cast it. Your opponent will try to unbound your spell. If his roll is equal or higher, then your spell is unbound. In other situation, your spell was casted successfully. You proceed until we will have no dice left to cast. Also, you may save your tokens for a later turn. In your shooting phase, you may choose a unit and declare a shooting. Each weapon profile have the range of your shooting attacks and one or several profiles of your shooting profile attacks. You will measure distance and shoot. Just keep check on your position on a terrain and your current range. Here you may see that increasing the range or doing some other things during the game will make your shooting roll harder. Also, if your roll is equal to 7+, that means that you should roll a 6 and after that roll again on a 4+. Only in that case your roll will be successful. After that, your opponent will make a save roll and sequence continues until the end of the phase. All of your units that charged in the charge phase may have a possibility to resolve attacks. So just roll the dice. Firstly, you check your attack skill and the defensive skill of your opponent's unit. That difference will create a successful number of the roll for you. After that, you roll it one more time, checking your strength of the weapon and opponent's toughness. Also, some of your attacks may have very interesting keywords that will give you an opportunity to make your opponent's save roll even more harder. After that, your opponent makes a save roll and that's it. After all of your attacks has been resolved, you and your opponent repeating the process with other units. After each combat, you will make a check on your units. You should see how many models you've killed and do you still having some special models in your unit. Your opponent check losses and his special models. If you lost the combat, you should roll leadership test. If that roll is failed, your unit will run away and your opponent may try to overrun them and kill them in the process. You roll 2 dice and your opponent does the same. If his roll is better than yours, then he just killed your unit. That's it. Now you know most of the basics and may play a game. The Beast Herds have many units which can harass an opponent deployment and play by using their ambush special rules. Beast Herds also have an access to bring a lot of chariots to the battle, giving them a fast and dangerous counter to enemy forces. A wide array of monsters and other fast units is often used to surround the opponent and then crush their forces with overwhelming might. Demon Legion's army is an army of specialists and is perfect for a player who likes to have options when mastering their troops. It can excel at very single facet of the game it concentrates on, but at a price of being weak against something else. Demons rely on their power from Veil to protect them, and so they have little to no physical armor when fighting. Dread Elves often use a mixed arms approach. That means a mixture of short and long range shooting units with different combat elements and magic support. They can also focus on a main infantry unit, supporting it with several smaller units to make sure it gets to the combat it wants. Dwarvenholz has many different playstyles available to them. They can play as an army that focuses on shooting the opponent's units off the board, as an army wielding medium-sized infantry blocks supported by war machines, and as army which marches fast towards their opponent. The different ways to play the Empire of Zonstahl army are either based on big slow units, which are supported by smaller nearby using shooting power, or faster units which pick their fights. Best way to remember when fighting with Empire of Zonstahl is that sum is more than the single parts. Empire can bring heavy knights, powerful mages, mighty artillery and masses of trained infantry, all with their different strength and capabilities. The forces of Highborn Elves army can be played based on mighty winged dragons, elite infantry, a defensive army where forces are split between shooting at range and selective combats, or as an aggressive army trying to overwhelm the opponent with many fast and hard-hitting threats. Highborn Elves are well armed and armored, but have little toughness behind their plate and mail. Infernal Dwarfs can bring several different armies to the field. They can bring an army consisting mostly of infantry, shooting units and war machines, or alternatively, they can be an army mostly consisting of monsters and monsters cavalry. Players can also decide to use them in a mixed approach. All strategies have in common that they can deal a lot of damage in a short distance. A Kingdom of Equitan is sometimes seen as 3 different armies in one. One option is to play as a mixture of knights and infantry, where one half of the army shoots or engages the opponent in place, till the other part comes it to smash the enemy, usually with powerful cavalry. This army uses units loaded with mighty characters and many hard-hitting monsters, supported by magic and shooting units. There is also a playstyle featuring many small units, overloading the opponent with threats and targets. This army uses units loaded with mighty characters and many hard-hitting monsters supported by magic and shooting units. There is also a playstyle featuring many small units overloading the opponent with threats and targets. Orcs and goblins can often be played by sending many different monsters to overwhelm the opponent, paired with close combat units trying to rush opposing forces. A completely different approach is a large army consisting mostly of big units of orcs and goblins to catch the opponent and then get in for the kill with. Zorian Ancient's army either supports its troops with magic and spells or uses these tricks to try to blast the opponent off the board. The Zorian Ancients can muster some medium-sized combat troops to engage and block the opponent and then counter their opponents with monsters. A general commanding the Zorian Ancients can choose from a variety of troops and units to win the day against their opponent. The Sylvan Elves often play using multiple highly mobile small units and try to pick favorable fights against slower but bigger opposing units attacking from many different sides, all while shooting down their opponents under a hail of arrows. Another common tactic is to focus on highly mobile shooting and avoid close combat entirely. Undying Dynasties, being an army of animated dead, unsurprisingly rely on magic. Through their spells, units are made stronger, and at the same time, casualties removed in their units are raised back, regaining their ranks. The army can play many chariots, either in multiple small units or in one big unit. Undying Dynasties also have an access to multiple really big monsters, which can be played together. Vampire Covenant is an army that relies on its characters, their magic, and the hitting power they can bring. They use masses of skeletons and zombies, which can be revived if they are struck down to wear down enemies, their inevitable advance. With these masses, they catch the opponent and then use a wide army of monsters and other undead units to win the battle. The Hordes of Verminswarm are an army that is based on its huge blocks of infantry and using characters to bring discipline to its masses. Occasionally, these forces will be accompanied by a mighty ruinous dictator to lead their legions into battle. Their armies are supported small shooting units, the other specialist units, as well as war machines. Warriors of the Dark Gods army has many different options for its players. It can play as an army fielding a lot of monsters and monstrous units, several medium-sized units, or an army combining heavy infantry with powerful cavalry or monsters. This army is mostly focused on close combat, and it is not able to inflict damage at range without using magic. People are usually played in 4,500 points. In this case, you may create a force to be reckoned with. Also, to simplify the process, use New Recruit as main source of creating rosters. There you will see units and their stats, limits for your roster, and also you may create war scrolls if it is needed to simplify the process. Also, you are having an access to all your mostly needed data. Magic cards, flux cards. You may find narrative campaigns, books, pre-game packs, how to play a skirmish mode, all recent patches data, and much more. Also, Team is releasing new factions that also may be represented on the battlefield. You are having Northern Tribes, Mongolia-style Makhar, cultists, and much more. Just go to the link and you will find all you need. This was the first video about 9th Age. Actually, I was very happy to create it. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, cause It's the most important motivation for me to create another kind of videos, so please tap on the like button and just write in the comments something. What do you think about my video and what do you want to see? I also want to create another series of videos explaining each phase in more details. Lore videos, campaigns, bat traps, all of that stuff. So at this point, it's very important for me to see your feedback about it. Have a good game and we'll see you soon.